Hello and welcome to News Tonight. I am Rhoda Ngozi. Our sign language interpreter is Elizabeth Nakakoni. Let's get started. Today marks the first day for resumption of the public means of transport across the country after the 42 days of lockdown. However, a different bus and taxi passengers have turned up, leaving the operators in suspense as many still opt to walk. Let's take a look.
By 5 a.m., buses and passengers had already. However, disinfecting the coaches was the first step.
So we have decided to use this parking slot to spray these buses before they go on their stages. Reason being, we are trying to prevent or to avoid the spread of COVID-19. So those are one of the measures which we have tried to put, and to avoid congestion also, we are allowing one by one bus to load.
To ensure total compliance to the COVID-19 standard operating procedures, the terminal has deployed security vigilantes.
We know we had a number of brokers who are confusing people, extorting money from people. So those are the things we've tried to put in place to avoid congestion and crowd in the park.
However, the first day of the resumption of the public means of transport has registered minimal customers as opposed to the anticipation.
Even our sector, the passengers are still few, but we shall be patient because they have been not working. Some have been in the village. They are just coming back.
They are coming in, but not as we expected. Maybe because of they are not yet back in town. They don't have money. They are not yet having money because they have not been working as we have been.
We were here last Thursday and you really saw it was a very quiet and totally empty space here at Namaiba bus terminal. But as you can see, business is resuming. Passengers are coming in here each and every minute, trying to set off for different destinations. Although the transport fares have been hiked or even doubled, but this seems to be not a concern of many passengers who at least have many narrations on why and how the 42 days of lockdown have impacted them.
I can't stop moving because of the transport. Though it is a bit challenging to get, but you have to cope up with the current situation in the country.
I'm going to Bukedia, and the reason as why I'm so early is because I've suffered a lot in this Kampala.
We cannot hike fares. We are poor as the travelers are. But before we went for the lockdown, we had already hiked the fares.
The president also directed the transport operators to champion the compliance and adherence campaign amongst themselves, or else they face another shutdown.
What we have agreed as leaders, whoever found taking 2 passengers, we are going to force him remain with 1 passenger. And those one without a mask, we are going to just force them to buy a mask and continue with their journey.
We are educating, sensitizing both the public and our fellow drivers and taxi and conductors that we lead. So we pray that the public bears with us to put these measures in practice.
They are now sounding warnings to fellow riders, drivers and passengers against defying the odds.
In the 42 days, everyone has suffered. We don't want to go back there. So we are going to force everyone, those who will not accept what we are telling them, we shall handle them to the security agencies like police.
The transport managers also want government to financially support this industry so that they can recollect themselves. Robert Onyango, UBC News.
And many of the shopping arcades and malls the arcades will remain closed until landlords fulfill the set guidelines by Ministry of Health and Kampala Capital City Authority by obtaining a clearance certificate on compliance from the respective authorities.
The easing of the lockdown brought a sigh of relief to the business community in Kampala City, following the presidential address that saw different sectors, including those operating in arcades and malls, but under strict observance of standard operating procedures. Today being the first day many of the business sectors were open following the presidential address on COVID-19 and partly small pockets of beehive activities in downtown Kampala. However, to those operating in arcades and malls in downtown remained stranded at the main entrances to their workplaces, save for Ham Business Center that remained opened with businesses going on like never before, but to other arcades and malls remained padlocked pending fulfillment of the set guidelines by KCCA and the Minister of Health in the fight against the spread of COVID-19.
But what is happening, we were taken aback by the scenario. The president came out and he allowed us to work. That by Monday, 2nd, arcades Chikubo should be open. But to our greatest surprise, we were shocked to come today to work and they say no, the owners of the arcades should again seek consent from KCCA to open up.
Kasente ngera lockdown wetu badde tuyisa etugenza okeera ng'ebizimbe bisibe etumanyi kye tugenda tukolera naye kye twategeera mbu omukulembeze lyatugudde.
This brought the moods of businessmen and vendors who woke up in the wee hours of the morning for work down.
N'okujja okunoonya ssente n'okusasula landiroodi okitegedde yajja kuba ayagala ssente ze so kye ŋŋamba ndi bandizze ne batuggulirawo ne bayisa mu bwangu bwamuyisa nga bwe yagambye n'ayisa mu bwangu bwangu najja n'atuggulira tusobole okutaba nga tuddamu okukola.
The Minister for Kampala Affairs, Mr. Kabanda, last week issued a set guidelines that each arcade in the Central Business District will only start operating upon getting a certificate of compliance after inspection, something that the city traders are finding hard to comply with.
Naye kaliki yayogedde akokutuukiza SOPs ba ministers ne RCC abatwala ekibuga Kampala bagamba abasuubuzi basooke balindeko.
Being the first day of the partial reopening of their shops where they work from closed. Sadam Mubale, UBC News, Kampala.
The police has heavily deployed its foot soldiers in and around the old taxi park following information that the taxi leaders were planning to invade and resume operations within the park. Now the old taxi park has for some time now been under renovation. Police has cautioned those into the taxi business to remain patient until it's officially open to the public by authorized entities.
The situation around the old taxi park remains tense, with a security build-up around the facility, as taxi drivers and conductors ponder plans for an invasion to use the facility after the president lifted the lockdown, allowing taxi operators to resume business. Old taxi park has been under renovation for close to a year now. Taxi operators spent the whole of the weekend in garages, fixing their vehicles that had developed technical issues after grounding them for 42 days. To them, the directive had attracted a smile on their face to return to business. But due to the vested interests surrounding the completion of the old taxi park, it's not possible to allow them access unless the handover of the facility to the respective entity KCCA is done. Unconfirmed intelligence reports indicate that some leaders within the Association of Taxi Drivers and Operators had planned to face their way to the old taxi park prior to the handover of the facility. The facility will be officially reopened by KCCA on a date yet to be communicated to stakeholders. According to police, a one Rashid searching is plotted to have been behind the alleged botched raid of the old taxi park.
The ringleader behind this act of criminality is alleged to be one called Rashid Sechindi, who is mobilizing drivers and conductors to prematurely occupy the old taxi park. This is a park that still remains a taxi park purely. It is not going to be redesigned or allocated to any other sector apart from the taxi industry.
Following this, Police deployed its personnel, backed up by local defense unit to foil the anticipated plans by a group of taxi operators. Police spokesman Fred Enanga at a press briefing in Naguru warned taxi leaders and their counterparts to desist from engaging in actions that may lead to violence and asked them to wait until its official reopening is communicated by KCCA.
I want to warn leaders in the taxi industry, especially Kotisa, against forcing their way into the refurbished old taxi park before it is commissioned. So we don't see the level of impatience that comes with this, that you start mobilizing people to protest and demonstrate, and yet we've just come out from a 42 extended lockdown.
However, speaking to Rashid Sechindi, he denied being under the allegations and urged fellow members and taxi operators to observe the set SOPs.
Bade balowooza nti abataxi naye eky'omukisa omulungi babalabye ku street gye bali bakola emirimu gyabwe tewaliwo kavuyo, so tubasaba timukwerinda ebyamaanyi ku paaka bamalirize obwo obutono obubulayo tuve ku street tukomewo.
In another development, an electricity transformer along Chikubo Lane, serving Skylight Shopping Arcade and other buildings, caught fire. The cause of the fire remains unknown, and many city dwellers converged in total violation of the SOPs to catch the moment.
Egata Central kumpi yonna wano. Guno mulundi gwa kutaano nga transformer ye bwatuka wetyo. Leero tubadde awo neeyabika omulundi ogwasoose. Transformer eno kyensaba ekitongole kya umeme ne gavumenti yaffe batuyambe basobole kutasa bizinesi z'abantu.
However, police moved in swiftly to disperse the crowds. Ivan Juko, UBC News.
Now, landlords downtown Kampala owning shopping arcades and malls have told their tenants that they will not waive outstanding rental bills unless otherwise. Now, the assurance of the tenants follows a presidential directive to the landlords not to harass their tenants during the partial lockdown. However, now in what seems to have been an unclear statement from the president, the tenants, I beg your pardon? Seems to have been an unclear statement from the president on whether the tenants were supposed to pay their rental fees for the period of the lockdown. The landlords have revealed that the president's directive had nothing to do with stopping them from demanding for their dues. Tenants are now in a catch-24 situation, pleading with their landlords for a waiver, but in vain. The landlords are maintaining their footprint of no rental exemptions.
Museveni locked down the country and ordered the closure of malls, arcades and shops selling non-essential goods. Sitting tenants were locked out and remained home until the president lifted the lockdown last week on Friday. However, President Museveni made the lockdown appeal to landlords not to harass tenants during the lockdown, to pay rent unlike the 2020 lockdown, where he told landlords to either forego some months or reschedule the payment. This time around, he remained silent on the matter, and now a bunch of landlords have become a thorn in the flesh of tenants, and they are saying no rent waiver to tenants. According to prominent businessman and proprietor of series of arcades and mall downtown Kampala, Moses Kirumira says there will be no waiver for rent dues, and premise his argument that many of the landlords are heavily indebted to the banks.
This is a very big issue as far as we are concerned. We are all aware that landlords too got very huge mortgages. They are heavily indebted from commercial banks. And our revenue definitely spending money for their wealth, we are indebted to them. So I don't think we shall be in a position to waive these rental areas from our tenants.
Mohamed Mukaddar, a businessman, says landlords and tenants need to harmonize for a win-win situation.
Regarding with the rent, it's a tough situation. Even in the last year, what we did, we decided to give them some relief. We have not yet finalized about this COVID time, this lockdown, how we are going to give them relief. Definitely it is, with the mutual understanding with the tenant and the landlord. We think that even this time there will be a relief for the tenants so that they continue their business.
However, the arcade and shopping mall tenants are appealing to their landlords to consider waiving off rental dues since the lockdown affected everyone.
What I'm saying, they have to sit and they give us time so that we look for money and we pay. Only that.
Nature nze jagamba balandlord batuyambe ku nsonga mukofe na tubadde mu lockdown ennaku eziyise balabe engeri tukwasaganyamo ffenna so kikomparinga omuntu kuba ennaku ana tubadde tetukola tubadde tuli waka namu bagenda okuggalawo nga twankamala okuwaayo sente za rent so batuyambe tusobole okuba nga mu nnaku zino batukkiriza tukole then ebirala tujja kwesorting after.
Saddam Mubale, Joel Vubia, UBC News, Kampala.
Meanwhile, Forum for Democratic Change FDC has urged government to consider reopening schools, condensing the syllabus and teaching children quickly before the country is hit by the third wave of COVID-19. Now speaking at a media briefing held at the party headquarters in Najanankumbi, the party spokesperson Ibrahim Semujunganda said it will not be possible for government to vaccinate all the 15 million children as planned.
President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni on Friday evening announced new measures and guidelines on how the country is to go forward after the 42 days of the second partial lockdown due to COVID-19. The president eased the lockdown on public transport, allowing passengers and border to carry one person. The shopping mall, however, in a response to the gradual unlocking of the economy, Uganda's main opposition party, the Forum for Democratic Change, says the reopening of some sectors of the economy is wanting. FDC spokesperson Ibrahim Semujunganda wonders why churches should remain locked over the next 60 days, yet they play a significant role in society.
Places of worship zigulwewo, zigoberere amateeka ga COVID ng'ebitundu ebirala, tuzikozese n'ozikozesa emirimu emirala, tuzikozesa okusabira abantu n'okubazaamu essuubi abantu eri baweddemu abafiiriddwa abantu baabwe, tuzikozese okansolinga abantu okulanga tubazza mu mbeera abantu abayisibwa obubi ekirwadde kino.
However, with the mutation of the virus, the FDC says government should rethink its position of staying the schools closed and children at home, given the fact that government in the interim is financially handicapped to finance the vaccination exercise of 15 million students. FDC holds the view that schools need to be reopened for the students and pupils to finish the syllabus before the country is hit with the third wave of COVID-19, considered to be more deadly than the second one.
Mwenda awanatera okujja nawulirako musenero ng'akyogera nti mugomwenda ng'enkuba etonye COVID yayinza okuba ng'atandise. Kati amasomero gaddeyo ku speedi abaana basome batuuka bakola bibuuzo bwe baba bamaliriza bakomewo ewaka. Zino ettaamu ze tubaye tusomeza emyezi esatu zikendeeze tusome omwezi gumu syllabus bagyongera gifunza. Iyo ninyeza abantu abalina obulwadde omutima, sukaali, sirimu n'ebirala zitulemye okugema. Ne milioni 21 ze yagamba nze tulina okugema okugulawo ziganyi kati agenda tugatteko abaana zifuuka 35.
The party also advises government to distribute interest-free loans to people whose businesses were affected by COVID-19, register and publish them for transparency purposes.
And can point to their existence. Then interest-free loans can be distributed instead of a mioga, which looks like a campaign money. So you make this money available and people can use it and then repay.
Meanwhile, FDC demands for full accountability of all the money released from the Consolidated Fund to counter the spread of COVID-19 pandemic. The FDC demand is premised on the Auditor General's report of 2020 into the expenditure of the borrowed loans from the IMF and the World Bank that points to the misuse and diversion of 1.7 trillion to sectors that were not supposed to benefit from the borrowed funds.
100 have been brought, another 100 is on the way. we don't know investment. These other things can follow later. So accountability for all the money, you've read the report of the Auditor General pointing to abuse.
The party has announced that it has reopened its offices countrywide to resume all activities of mobilization. I'm Nafka Farida and Andrew Sebira in Najanankumbi.
Uganda police has charged and dismissed 9 officers over pretense to enforce COVID-19 directives and extortion of money from the public. These are accused of implementing guidelines selectively and with the intention of extortion. Police spokesperson Fred Enanga has warned the public against dubious dealings with security officers.
In the fight against the spread of COVID-19, government introduced stringent measures and the security agencies were tasked to enforce the observance, among which are curfew time, closure of some businesses and other restrictions. Some scrupulous officers took the law in their hands and started to extort money from the public, especially bar owners, and leave them to operate.
The disciplinary court panel charged 3 police officers, namely Sergeant Wachemba Harriet, Police Constable Akathurira Israel, and Police Constable Katumba Joseph. This was after it was established that these officers were continuously involved in corrupt practices of soliciting and demanding bribes in order to release motorcycles of mostly border riders.
9 senior officers have been aligned in the Police Professional Standards Unit and have been charged with misconduct, which has called for their dismissal from work. Police is cautioning the public over criminal dealings with the security officers in back doors.
Keep on sending out there that please, wherever officers in the course of their duty demand for a bribe or solicit for a bribe, please seek an excuse. We have means of trapping these officers. The number of sister agencies that are at the forefront in countering such cases of abuse.
With the relaxed lockdown, police is to concentrate much of its efforts on government institutions like ministries, departments and agencies to inspect 20% staff on-site adherence.
The 20% requirement of staff in MDAs. We didn't strictly enforce this area during previously, but we noticed that there were a number of cases that were being registered in a number of institutions, which even forced them to close down operations. So for that matter, our Joint Intelligence Committee is going to be monitoring these numbers and ensuring that MDAs are not operating above the 20% capacity.
Police have arrested 12 suspects and 3 motorcycles retrieved about the incident of last week, which left an Indian robbed of his money at Mwanda Road by the motorcycle organized gangs.
We have Sekaganda Farouk, alias Sharif, and also Akidi Khalif. We took a few of the suspects. They helped us to reconstruct and redocument the scenes properly. Accomplices along the border stages, and that is how they would get built up as they are surveilling their target and rob them at the most opportune time.
In another development, UPDF has reported the increasing abduction of Ugandan fishermen at Lake Albert by Congolese. The force spokesperson Brigadier Flavia Vyekwaso is accusing some of the Ugandan fishermen of taking part in this vice.
And because the other side, the Congolese do not use silverfish, so it is usually the other side, there is usually a lot of silverfish. So Ugandans usually are tempted to cross the line, and that is when they are caught. Because now the other side know that when you get them, they are not taken into any court of law, but they get money. They extort money from them. So now it's getting into and a business. Get them, pick money from them and
adopt bilateral labor agreement in the bid to fight human trafficking.
We are coming to a common approach to the movement of migrant workers for their protection, which means coming up with regional guidelines in the name of bilateral labor agreements. This is especially to promote a rights-based approach within the region, that we work collectively because there's always been unhealthy competition and unequal negotiation powers between Uganda and other countries.
Abdul Nasir Lubwama, Juma Nsamba for UBC News.
And now the plastic recycling industry in Uganda has cried foul over the latest government move to ban the use of polythene bags in the country. Moses Ategeka, the spokesperson for plastic recyclers, says such a ban will contravene the National Environment Act 2019, which provides for existence of the industry. Ategeka wants government to first revisit the law before any ban is implemented.
September 2019 was one of the several times we visited this plastic recycling plant in the Kabanyoro area of Wakiso district. And this is what we found. Outside the factory was a collection of used polythene carrier bags ready for recycling. While inside, it was the recycling process itself. Students from Makerere University's College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences were also here to learn a thing or two.
Our association has a mission of developing environmental stewards.
They don't know these things. Nearly 2 years after this exposure, the plastic recycling industry is on the verge of eradication. This follows a recent decision by government to rid the country of plastic products.
The production, importation, and the use of carrier bags, commonly known as kavera, in this country of Uganda, we are enforcing the ban.
Plastic recyclers have now weighed in on what they describe as a move not in the right direction.
We have reached what you would call a takeoff stage. Takeoff stage whereby you have the most needed recycling technologies, and in East Africa. In East Africa, we become number one. When it comes to Africa, you can only talk of Egypt, talk of South Africa.
The plastic recycling industry is reported to have grown over the years from one factory to tens more. The recycling equipment is said to be expensive for an industry that is seen to be employing hundreds of Ugandans.
How do you be having a factory and you do not have a recycling technology for cleaning the environment? That is your enemy number one to the environment.
The National Environment Act of 2019. Moses Ategeka says this law, among other things, provides for existence of the plastic recycling industry.
The Ugandan, the persons talking of ban, must have one discipline. Hold the plastics very well, keep them in gazetted areas, take them to places where they can be recycled because they will be needed for recycling.
In the recent statement released by the Ministry of Water and Environment, urban centers are required to promote greening models.
And we are going to ensure that our teams do the supervision diligently.
The ban on production, importation of polythene carrier bags in the country is part of a Ugandan government decade-long declaration of environmental restoration. Henry Okrut, UBC.
Report availability of more funds and other resources for the effective management of the pandemic. Eastern team led by MP West Udama South, Emmanuel Otala, have just concluded a 2-week sanitization and awareness program on the prevention of COVID-19.
The Eastern Regional Parliamentary Task Force on COVID-19 is one of the 4 regional parliamentary teams under the mainstream Abdu Katuntu 40-member COVID-19 task force. It was instituted by the Deputy Speaker Anita Among last month to coordinate with government in the fight against the spread of COVID-19 pandemic in the communities. The task force headed by Dr. Emmanuel Atala spent much of its time on sensitizing and creating awareness and assessing the role of the private sector healthcare providers in COVID-19 management challenge.
We went around the country, or rather the eastern part of the country, to make an assessment how government was prepared and how it was responding to the COVID pandemic. We had 8 terms of reference, among which was to make an assessment of government's preparedness and response, but also to look into the financial management of all funds that had been earmarked and sent to the districts in the fight against the pandemic.
According to their preliminary report on preparedness and response measures, more funds and other resources may be required to adequately manage the pandemic.
We found that more resources need to be appropriated, and I believe Parliament is very much willing to do that. But most importantly, our finding is that the best way to counter this pandemic is mass vaccination, mass testing of people.
According to the team, if the population relax in observing the set-up standard operating procedures, chances are high for the 3rd wave.
I must say the people must be very, very cautious. Should the people neglect the standard operating procedures, we are very, very likely to slide into a 3rd wave. And so when we moved around the eastern part of the region, and of course other teams also moved in their respective regions that were assigned to them, we came up with recommendations that we hope to present tomorrow to plenary for discussion.
Other regional task forces still compiling their reports are those of Central Uganda, led by Dr. Michael Bukenya, Member of Parliament Bukuya, Dr. Charles Ayume, Member of Parliament Koboko Municipality of Northern Uganda, and Dr. Joseph Ruyonga of Hoima West Division for Western.
Now, a 10-year-old girl from Kole district is still battling for her life at Lira Regional Referral Hospital after her father locked her in a house without food for a week. Juliet Akello, a resident of Aboke sub-county in Kole district, also epileptic, was locked with chickens, ducks and rabbits for a week without food or anything to drink after her stepmother complained she would pass on epilepsy to her unborn baby. Akello was served by a rabbit customer who had her cry and posted her photos on social media, prompting the attention.
In Abohe sub-county, Kole district is battling for her health at Lira Regional Referral Hospital. Akello, who has been living with her stepmother, was locked without eating and drinking for a week.
And even when she was rescued, she was already very weak and very frail and malnourished. So this man decided to tie the girl's legs and then the arms because the girl's mother is late.
Juliet's brother said since their mother died, they have been receiving gross mistreatment from both their father and stepmother. Juliet, Akele, 10 years old, also epileptic, was locked in a hut with chicken and rabbits by her father when her stepmother complained she would pass on the disease to her unborn baby when left outside.
You can't just leave a child to suffer like that. They are helpless. They are unable to support themselves because they are children.
If you see that kid, it's really sad. When someone just talks and says it, you don't see it. Imagine a human being who is locked in the house where chicken and ducks are being kept and rabbits. And you know how ducks and chicken really want the wound. The big wounds are on both sides of the hips. Trust me, it looks horrible.
We have arrested the father of this child
Ayari Tom, who, together with his wife, Akelo Agnes, they have alleged to have denied this child in the house for 1 week without eating.
Cases of stepmothers mistreating and brutalizing their co-wives' children is rampant among many families. Weeks ago, a minor was beaten to coma by her stepmother in Lira City West Division. Irene Nakech is a businesswoman in Lira and has been lending a hand to such children.
I don't have an NGO, I don't have a CBO, I'm just as Irene. The only thing I do, I have social capital. When I see a case like this in a community, I put my voice on social media like Facebook, like Twitter, and then I am so happy that people trust me.
However, those who rescued the child feel overwhelmed since her father has been arrested and the brother who is taking care of her at the hospital cannot provide for the necessities.
Putting my hands up, requesting anyone who can support this boy. Me, I'm now looking at the boy because when the girl gets out of the hospital, this boy will need to go and look after this girl. So the boy needs empowerment. The boy has actually been surviving on digging.
Tom Manyati, who is the victim's father, has been arrested while his wife Agnes Akelo had just delivered and could not be kept in police cell. Ediolwa, UBC News.
Quite speechless. With that, we take a short break. We'll return with more details.
Today in history.
Daniel Basamula Ekere Mwanga II was the Kabaka of Buganda from 1884 until 1888 and from 1889 until 1897. He was the 31st Kabaka of Buganda. Mwanga was captured and in April 1899 was exiled to the Seychelles, where he spent the rest of his life. Later on, 8th May 1903, Kabaka Mwanga died at the age of 35, and on 2nd August 1910, his remains were repatriated and buried at Kasobi Tombs.
Wait, Abu, and what are you doing throwing papers all over the place?
I'm looking for an invoice for a sound system and cables that I received yesterday, but I can't find it.
You know there is a way of keeping all this in one place and available to you as and when you need it.
I really wish there was one, because the way these invoices grow legs and disappear.
I believe this is what you're looking for.
Now how did it get there?
Tabo! Do you know that with EFRIS, you can stay on track of all your business transactions and improve on your record keeping?
How so?
Katituliku computer with EFRIS. I just search using the fiscal document number and I retrieve the records I'm looking for. Bookkeeping becomes simple after that.
Kapo, awesome, yeah.
I began using URS Kakasa Solutions and now I'm in charge of my business. And you can as well.
Kakasa, be sure you are in charge of your business.
Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.
We've cut and reduced our MTN Momo withdrawal rates. Now you can withdraw mobile money at the lowest rates. You also get MTN Central Points when you deposit, send, and withdraw MTN mobile money. Visit our Momo agents countrywide and withdraw mobile money at our reduced rates from 1st May 2021. Everywhere you go. MTN.
Echa COVID-19 kijja kugwa only if we stay at home, observe physical distancing, wear masks properly, sanitize or wash our hands with soap and water regularly, or get vaccinated now.
Welcome back. You are still watching News Tonight. Now, medical experts have attributed setbacks encountered in the fight against the spread of the novel COVID-19 pandemic to the shortage of medical personnel to handle patients in critical condition. Ironically, it is not about the lack of human resource. The number of trained personnel is well over 500 doctors and 150 specialists per year, but the challenge is in the recruitment to public service. Medical professor Dr. Francis Amaswa builds his argument on the need to improve on the working conditions for health workers in the country, which Health Minister Dr. Jennifer Cheng concedes on, emphasizing and need to reskill medical practicing professionals. Dr. Skimono has more.
At the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, Uganda, like most countries, had little or no capacities to handle, let alone manage, critical care patients. This is because most of the high-standard centers to try out this task mainly concentrated around the capital Kampala and a few scattered in some regional referral hospitals all grapple with the challenges of inadequate human resource and outdated equipment. The COVID-19 pandemic was an awakening call to economic planners and leaders to invest in equipping and improving many of the health facilities that had been earmarked to handle COVID-19 cases. The move has to a reasonable extent cushioned the health sector with partial capacity. The Ministry of Health reveals that all plans to better the sector's capacity are on table.
The ministry has begun reskilling 180 existing health workers. Those are doctors and specialists, both in private and public facilities, in oxygen titration, oxygen management, management of the critically ill, and infection prevention and control to bridge the gap in intensive care management.
While delivering the national budget on 4th June, President Yoweri Museveni directed the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Health to oversee recruitment of more personnel to absorb all qualified doctors in the country into health facilities up to sub-county level.
WHO tells us that we should be having one doctor for every 500 population. So since Uganda now is 42 million people, I think they are using the figure 42 million, it means 84,000 doctors. But we are talking over only something like 5,000 in the government service. So the new minister, the new minister of health, the new prime minister, please, I don't want to hear the issue of unemployed doctors.
However, to date, this directive is yet to be implemented despite the dire need for health services occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Alfred Driwale, a commissioner at the Ugandan National Expanded Program for Immunization, says recruiting for this current situation may prove difficult since the country lacks qualified personnel for critical care.
The beds were procured, they are installed in all the regional referral hospitals. The elements and trained to manage the cases who are admitted there. And this is the limitation in some of the regional referral hospitals.
Surprisingly, with the current global scramble for health workers, Uganda has suffered an adverse effect of not paying well her health practitioners. Many have fled the country for greener pastures in countries where human resource is slightly valued.
Currently, the medical officers earn 3 million shillings, and the senior consultants and the consultants earn about 7 million shillings. Just across in Kenya, an intern doctor who has just graduated earns either the equivalent or more than a consultant, a senior consultant here, and it is 200 kilometers, so a 4-hour bus ride. So much so that you were asking about the critical care staff in the COVID treatment units. We have 75 anesthesiologists or intensivists in the country. But just the other day, along Bugoma here at the border, Kenya advertised, and several of them went, because when you go there, it's just a bus ride away. And some of us, our communities are even across the border. You can as well just walk across the border.
What we need is also to improve our working conditions here. When we met with the president, and he's been saying this many times, pay scientists small, pay scientists small. For doctors, he said a minimum salary of 5 million. That's what he directed the other day. And that should happen. You know, the people are fighting for money. You hear now MPs have got 200 million shillings each to buy cars, which they probably have already. What about getting more money to these health workers so that they can treat people who are going down with COVID? So it's just a matter of who has got more muscle.
Professor Francis Omaswa, the Executive Director, African Center for Global Health and Social Transformation, ACHEST, and former Director General at the Ministry of Health, says the problem is with the lack of health workforce planning. To Professor Omaswa, first addressing challenges of health workforce governance before implementing the presidential directive would be a magic bullet of all times.
Right now, the health workforce planning in Uganda is, I think, not there at all. You find, for example, that new medical schools are being created, even the old ones, and they are starting to train people in courses which are not aligned to the skill needs of the country, to the disease burden of the country, or even to posts which are there in the public service.
Available statistics show that every year, Uganda produces not less than 500 doctors and about 150 specialists. However, disturbing revelations point to the fact that there are over 1,120 young doctors in the streets of Kampala unemployed, adding up to the statistics of many unemployed youth. UBC has learned that following the presidential directive, a few vacancies were advertised for specifically emergency services that are on short-term basis.
So the staff are there, they are ready to work, but they have not been employed. Those who are working are being paid very low salaries. And then even those who are in these risky situations, their allowances are not being paid.
Workers, all of them who die from COVID should be compensated. I've heard some people say that only those who are in the COVID treatment centers should be compensated. Actually, the people who are in greater danger of infection are the ones who are not in the COVID treatment centers. They are the ones who are out there in health centers, in other clinics, who receive all types of patients whom they don't even know whether they have COVID or not. They are the ones at bigger risk.
Infrastructure development for the health sector is another bottleneck that has derailed quality service delivery. Professor Francis Omaswa is saddened by the fact that the expenditure on health per capita, instead of shooting high, it is on a downward slope every financial year.
I was in the Ministry of Health. We were spending like $65 per capita. Today, we are spending like $45 per capita. It has come down. So we need to think, because of COVID, the whole issue of how to build a health system that will prepare for more COVIDs, which are coming.
The National Health Insurance Bill that was hoped to bridge gaps in the health sector financing and facilitate infrastructure development still awaits the President's signature, having been approved by the 10th Parliament.
We need this the National Health Insurance actioned so that there is some additional financing, especially for hospital care, so that even if the primary health care services operate, we are doing well with prevention. Now people have learned how to wash their hands, the toilets are improving, the water resources are improving, but once you reach in the hospital, the resources are inadequate.
However, all is not lost. Plans to rekindle and improve the services of the village health teams are at the tail end. Professor Omaswa, a consultant on health governance, revealed that the president directed on the importance of elevating VHTs from rendering services on a voluntary basis to at least earn a salary not less than 100,000 shillings per month.
If they work well, the awareness of the population, the trust of the population, the access to information by the population will be better. And it should enable us to ease the lockdown, provided that there is a strong community support. There is positive behavior from the people. To me, that's by far the single most important one.
Dorcas Kimono, UBC News.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite show.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
Welcome back. You are still watching News Tonight. Now, government has affirmed commitment towards offsetting the pending payment of tobacco farmers in Bunyoro sub-region. Prime Minister Rhoda Ngozi urges the farmers to withdraw the case in court and speed up the payment process. Nabanja was in Bulisa district to assess the flood disaster situation there.
Yes, I'm told there are some farmers who are here and we have their money. The president directed that these people be paid. Parliament passed a supplementary budget in March, and the money is with Ministry of Tourism, Trade and Industry. The Minister for Bunyoro is here. She has the latest now. The Minister for Bunyoro, because we have a group of people who went to court, those farmers in Hoima. We have a group of farmers who did not go to court. Those are in Nakakoni. I don't know what happened in Bulisa.
Even in Bulisa, Madam Minister, we have a team that went to court.
Yes, those who went to court, we advised them to withdraw their case from court, so that they can be paid. But as these ones who did not go to court, we want to pay them now because we have the money. The challenge we had was tobacco and Continental and Nima Tabak had not yet finished. They had not concluded the issue of signing an agreement because they are supposed to pay back this money to government. Yes, so the agreement had delayed, but now it's done.
And newly appointed Uganda Cranes head coach Milton Mitchell has returned to Uganda ahead of his official unveiling. Mitchell was welcomed at the Entebbe International Airport by FUFA third Vice President Darius Mugoye and Communications Director Ahmed Hussein. The Serbian Wolf travelled east to west, and now he is back on official national duty after earlier agreeing on working terms with FUFA. According to the coach himself, he has since learnt a lot more out there, and after 4 years he is back home with intentions of conquering. Well, that does it for News Tonight. Thank you for sticking with us. Elizabeth Nakakoni is our sign language interpreter. I am Rhoda Ngozi. We'll leave you with the weather update. Good night.
Thanks for tuning on UBC once again. Kutesa Mili with your weather update. Good evening. We are still having light showers, more especially around the lake showers, the eastern part and northern part of our country. We are seeing the rainfall amount of 12.0 millimeters across Chitugum, Toro with 3.9, Buginyanya with 2.8, Igulu with the lowest of 2.3 millimeters. Seeing that satellite picture, we are seeing moist winds blowing from the Indian Ocean towards our country, plus the moist air from Congo air mass meeting within our country, enhanced with the local effects, bring us the wet activities that we are having lately. But tomorrow morning, we expect to wake up with light showers across the lake showers, parts of the east and the northern part of our country. Though the parts of Karamoja and southwestern part of our region, I expect to have sunny intervals. Afternoon hours, I expect a pickup of rainfall from most parts of our country, apart from some parts like of Mbarara, where we expect a continuation of sunny intervals. Temperature to rise up to 28 degrees of Celsius across Karamoja regions, 26 across Arua, in our capital city Kampala also, and 28 across Jinja, 30 across Kasese, that is the maximum, and the lowest being Kabale with 25 degrees Celsius. News moving out of our country touring other cities across the globe. We are forecasting sunny conditions across Dubai and Johannesburg with a maximum of 41 degrees Celsius across Dubai, Hong Kong, New York and Moscow. Expect to have sunny intervals with a maximum of 24 degrees Celsius across Moscow. Thanks for tuning on UBC once again. I remain Kutesa Mili. Stay tuned. See you tomorrow.